Amen. And that was part one, and we didn't actually go to one single verse, but we will. I've got lots of them, okay? But I wanted to lay the foundation. So this is the part that we call the afterburn. I'm hoping you're excited about this teaching, okay? You know, I know, okay? I was talking to someone earlier, and I mentioned I was teaching on forgiveness, and they were like, oh, I just listened to that. I said, it will not be the same. Okay? Because I've come to know over the years, since I did the other one, that I did not hit strong enough or clear enough the whole understanding about the part that you have to do and how it relates to reconciliation and restoration or not relating to reconciliation and restoration. And that's the key. Okay, so when whoever you're estranged from gets in your face and says, well, you have a spirit of unforgiveness, you look them very calmly in the eye and say, no, I have forgiven you. But that doesn't automatically mean that we have reconciliation or restoration. Okay, you're upset because we are not reconciled. Okay, and I'm not ready to do that, or maybe I'm not interested in doing that, and I don't have to be. Okay? Because it may not be safe to be reconciled. Or you just may not be in a place where you're stable enough to reconcile. Maybe it's a lighter level trespass, but it wouldn't be good for the relationship to try to reconcile when you're still holding on to stuff that you haven't packaged and resolved. Reconciliation before resolving can be a real problem. It's just going to go back to estrangement. All right? And so, but you haven't forgiven me. Yes, I have. But they're looking for the evidence. Okay? And there may not be evidence that you can point to. They either have to believe you or not. Because it's something you're doing inside. Okay? You're releasing something. You're letting it go. Now, if you haven't resolved it, you may still act in a certain way towards them. We're going to be like, well, you didn't forgive me because you're still lashing out at me. Well, that's because I haven't fully let go of some of these things in the resolution part. Okay? See, until you can fully release, then maybe you really haven't forgiven. Okay? So be careful that the person says, well, you haven't forgiven me. You say, well, I'm working on it because I haven't really been able to release yet what you did or how I felt about what you did. Okay? So just because you said, well, I forgive them, well, not if you haven't let it go. You haven't fully done it yet. It's not easy to really forgive. You got to let it go. And what you're letting go is the emotional part, the pain. All right, who wants to get us started? Okay, well, this is the Afterburn. We're going to take comments and questions online. Rob and Kurt are on the back. Okay, Steve's got a mic to bring around, and he wants to give it to Michael first.
So my question would be, how does timing play in all of this? Like as far as the actual first step, which is the forgiveness, is it appropriate to have a time to be able to go over it in your mind? Things that happen, is it automatic? Is it?
No.
And then from step to step, is there any timing required?
The answer to it is yes and no. There is time required, meaning you're only able to process the level of trauma you experienced as fast as you're able to process it. What you want to be aware of is, am I delaying in processing? All right? Am I making excuses not to process? Because trauma, if it's small, you can process it fairly quickly. If it's big, it may take a while. All right? I tell people when they lose a loved one, this is a trauma. Okay? And by the way, there are people that need to forgive their spouse for dying. Because there are people that get angry at them. How dare they die? How dare they leave me here by myself? Or they'll get mad they'll get mad at Yahweh for taking the spouse. Okay? And so it takes a while to process the loss of a spouse, the loss of a parent, the loss of a child. And what I teach people in the grieving process is that you just want to have enough awareness to know that as you're going through the process, are you getting stuck at any point in the process And then you may need some help getting out, unstuck. But the bigger the trauma, the more time it will take for you to process that, and that's okay. That's where you may want to make sure you're having somebody to help you through and monitor you as you go through the process. There may be some dumb thing that you guys are all dealing with. You come to me and I'll say, you just need to let that go, like right now. That's just dumb, okay? And some of you know I've said that to you. But there's other things where I'll say, look, you need to take time and let yourself go through the process. If you've lost a loved one, Steve knows that and other people know that. I've told you, look, this thing is going to take time. And there's a grieving process that your emotional and psychological makeup has to go through. Okay? But it helps to have somebody watching you going, hey, are you okay? Are you stuck in any of this sort of the steps of the process? And if you are, then you might need someone to help kind of talk to you to figure out how you got stuck and how to get you unstuck. So the answer is yes and no. Yes, there is time necessary, and no, you shouldn't take longer than is necessary, but each one's going to have its own unique sort of time frame. Okay? Okay, so, these things just require us to be a lot more aware of ourselves. Okay? We have a really overly sensitive, heightened awareness of everybody else. And we tend to be way too affected by what we notice everybody else doing and their attitudes. But we tend to be very lacking in our self-awareness. All right? We need to be a lot more self-aware. Not self-obsessed or self-possessed, but self-aware. Okay? Are you aware of your state of mind? Are you aware of your behavior being affected by a state of mind? Are you aware of your, you allowing something to trigger and then owning that immediately, saying, wow, I still have this problem I'm dealing with, and then go and apologize to someone and say, look, I got triggered. It's not your fault. What you did triggered something I haven't fully dealt with. Okay? I had that happen the other day. I snapped at, my kids, and I said, oh, but it wasn't their fault. I still have some things that can trigger, and I got upset. Okay? And I went right away and apologized and owned it and said, please forgive me, I said, what you did still needs to be addressed, but not the way I addressed it. Okay? Okay, there's nothing wrong with you saying to the person, look, you still trespassed, but it was like on a scale of 1 to 100, it was like a 3, and I reacted like it was a 70, okay? And so the 3 still needs to be addressed, but not like it was a 70, okay? So I'm not saying that, you don't still get to say, look, there was something that happened, but I want to own, look, if you do something in response to what someone else does and you respond wrong, you're both wrong now. And you at least need to own your part. That doesn't exonerate them from their part, that it shouldn't be addressed and they should maybe fix it or whatever it is, okay? All right? But if you're going to respond to everything on a high level, then there's no gradation in your response, then how is the person going to know what should be treated as more important than others? What's a higher level of issue? Okay? So if you're going to respond to your child's room being a mess on the same level as finding out that they wrecked the car or some other thing, it's not the same thing. You're going to have to find ways to respond to a level 3 thing in an appropriate way in a level 70. So the kids also learn, and your spouses learn, because you may treat your spouse as if they did something that's way up high on the scale when it really isn't, because you're having a problem. And that's what I did. And I have that problem from time to time. If you know me, you've probably seen it, okay? I'm not perfect. I'm far from it, just like the rest of you. I mean, we're all not perfect, right? But then one of the things that we can do is you have to own. You just own it, and that takes self-awareness. Okay, if you're just doing it and have no awareness of it, then you're not going to own it. You can't own something you're not even aware you're doing. You have to be able to watch yourself and go, wow, I just freaked out over something that was like a level 3 thing. Why would I do that? First thing I need to do is go tell the person, I am so sorry that I overreacted. Okay, because what you did bothered me, but it really didn't need that level of reaction. Own that. And then take your time to resolve it, meaning, what can I do to not allow that to happen? How can I react to a level 3 thing like a level 3 thing instead of a level 70 thing, or act as if it's 100, And that's kind of part of the key. Be more self-aware. Okay, who's next?
Oh, he had the question I had about what's the length of time. Because it's been about a year now since Gwen's passing, and just in talking with people, I've heard statements from people. It's like, wow, this thing that's holding them back from moving on is still affecting them today. Because how could they even make the statement, which sounds to me, I'm not going to go into detail, but it's like that statement alone, like you said before you met Rebbitzin, that's not a person you want to be involved with, because they're still dealing with that past hurt. And it could have been 20 years ago, but they're still holding them back. So, yeah, you got my question.
Yeah. Look, and again, if you are, how do I want to say this? I don't want to set a specific rule, okay? But if you lose a spouse, you probably need at least a year before you should even think about any kind of new relationship, because there's just so much that has to be settled internally in you. And it's not because you're not wanting to have a relationship, because some people just don't do well by themselves and they really want to be in a relationship and things like that. But you're not going to be good to that person or for that person because you still have trauma that they don't need to deal with that you haven't dealt with yet. And you don't need to bring that and put that on them. And so I would say, as a rule of thumb, like a guideline, I wouldn't. Now, that doesn't mean that there aren't some exceptions, okay? What I'm saying is, depending on the level of trauma, you need a good amount of time to process that. And if it's a shorter thing, you don't need as much, but just realize those kind of things. So, and I've told people, especially when they've had a spousal loss, okay, you're probably going to need at least a year to that doesn't mean after the year you're wonderful, okay? I mean, you will never be 100% wonderful having lost your spouse, especially if you were married for any period of time. That person was a huge part of your life. But at least functionally able to now go back into another relationship would probably take at least that long, just to get yourself healthy enough to be able to do that. All right? Okay, who's next? Okay, Deirdre?
First of all, Rabbi, thank you so much. And big praise to Yahweh, because he always seems to know what's going on in my life and what I need right when I need it. My daughter is a beautiful, empathetic blessing. She is my firstborn. She is the love of my life. But she acts very much the way that a cousin of mine did, even in her good behavior. He was the product of a relationship that probably should never have happened. The mother was on drugs and drinking, and he was born with a tumor in his brain that prevented him from functioning properly. The father could not take care of him. The mother was bipolar, which I'm sure added. And my grandmother was given custody of him, but she was not healthy herself. So my mother and my aunt did what they could. And when they could not, and my sister and I were available, we were told, you need to help your grandmother raise this child. And I was young myself and didn't know how to do it. And he would say horrible things, and I didn't know how to handle it. And being young myself and in control, not in control of my emotions, I just would end up shouting and yelling, and he ended up committing suicide at the age of 13 because he didn't know how to handle life. And I see him reflected in my daughter. And most of the time, I can handle the situations because I chose her. She's my responsibility. I chose her. This was not thrust upon me. I chose this beautiful child. But there are moments when it all comes back.
Yep.
And I hate myself for the yelling and the things that come out of my mouth. And I love this child. I am striving to be the best mother that Yahweh is allowing me to be, but it all comes back. And I thank you so much, and thank you, Abba, for hitting this nail right on the head, because I can overcome this.
Amen.
I have seen a war hero who is a triple amputee wrestle an alligator. Imagine that picture in your head. I can do this. I can let everything go. And my daughter is not the boy that I had to raise.
Amen.
And I thank you and I thank Abba for allowing this sermon to happen.
Amen. 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 Let me just take a second to take advantage of the opportunity that Deirdre gives us, okay? There is a lot of commonality between what she just said and all of your experiences. In other words, in all of your experiences, you have to recognize to some degree that, okay, there's differences in your circumstance. Okay, this child, Alice is not the boy that you had to interact with. You are not the young child who was not equipped to try to raise him. There's, recognize the differences, and that helps you to untrigger the fear that something similar is going to happen because somehow you're connecting dots that are really not connected. Even though they look similar enough on some levels, they're not the same. Okay? So and that all of you can hopefully benefit from that. Okay? And recognizing also that in the complex makeup of that child, you were not the reason they gave up on life, that he gave up on life. It was not your fault. Nothing you did probably could have prevented any of that, because that child had a tumor. That child was rejected in all kinds of non-conducive situations, did not have the parenting that your child, even if you do lose your temper from time to time or whatever, has two loving parents with her all the time. She's in a whole different community environment than the boy had. And these things are different, okay? And we need to all recognize, look, when I counsel couples in trouble, okay, marriages, often when I'm counseling them, one will say to me, well, here we go again. He or she is doing that thing again. And I keep saying to them, wait, it's different this time. They're like, what do you mean? I say, because this time you have me. Now, that doesn't fix it, by the way, but it does make it different. Because I said, well, when this happened last time and you guys, whatever, and you split up, or was I there? No. Did you have a pastor, counselor, rabbi person who you had a good relationship with, who you trust involved? No. Then this is different. Okay? That doesn't mean it doesn't feel the same. Let that be the key here. Just because something feels the same doesn't mean it's the same. So when these things happen, Deirdre feels like that. It triggers the feeling. It doesn't mean it is that, though. It just feels like it. And you have to then, this is one of your tools, remind yourself of all the things that are different. Okay, that child did not have two loving parents with them all the time. Yours does. That child didn't have, and just keep reminding us, you're an adult now having a second child on the way. You were a child yourself then with a child. Okay? You were not old enough to really have been equipped to do the things that were put on you to do. Keep reminding yourself of all of the things, especially the causality thing where you do not somehow trigger the thought that you are the reason the person committed the suicide. Okay? And by the way, this is going to be somewhat controversial to some degree. There's a court case, I think, on TV where some girl is being, going through court because she's being accused of the boyfriend's suicide because of the horrible texting that she did, trying to either tell him to kill himself or whatever. I don't even know the whole story. But you know what? I'm not saying she should be off the hook or anything like that for all the... Nobody makes anybody kill themselves. All right? So you do not ever need to own that. If someone decides they can't do life anymore, it's because they decided they can't do life anymore. And you are not the reason, or at least you're not the whole reason or part. They may try to point a finger and give you but you are not. They have to make their choice to either deal with their life stuff, which we're talking about in this teaching today, or not deal with their life stuff. Okay? And people generally do not do these things just because somebody, if I think about how many times someone might have told me, well, go kill yourself. I mean, we tease each other as teenagers, say that all the time. Okay, people generally don't just go do what you tell them to do when you're saying that, and neither do you expect them to. Oh, why don't you just go off and kill yourself? I mean, these things, the person has to own that. Allow the people in your life that they have to own their choices. And don't just you own that somehow it's your fault. It's much more complex than that. I'm not saying you don't have to own what you did. Okay, maybe you didn't do the best job in anything else, but that's not the reason necessarily that a person made the choices that they have to own. Does that make sense to everybody? Am I making that clear? All right? There's no reason for you to own somebody else's choice. Oh, but I contributed to it. Maybe you did, maybe you didn't. You don't know enough about what was going on in their head. They may not have been thinking about you at all. Maybe they're thinking about the parents or some other thing. Maybe the tumor had something to do with it. Who knows? I'm just saying there's so many factors that you can't possibly know for sure what's what, that you need to definitely not own that. I'm not saying you do. I'm just saying, and not only any fear that somehow your child might end up in the same place. Because if your child did, it wouldn't be because of that anyway. It'd be because of they're not able to cope with something in their life. But if you're providing them with the loving environment, every one of us as a child, and it seems like everybody in this room is still alive and didn't kill themselves, was yelled at by a parent, spanked or beat up or some degree, whatever, by a parent, and somehow you managed to make it this far. Most children do. Okay? By most, I mean like 99.99 whatever percent. So that doesn't mean you should continue, in doing something you shouldn't. It means you should continue to struggle to give the appropriate level of correction and the appropriate way of treating them, etc. But recognize that we're fairly resilient creatures. And we can take a lot, all right? Even though society seems to be getting worse in its ability to process and take anything, but that's a societal problem. Okay, but I appreciate that you brought that out so I can say that, okay? Recognize the differences. Recognize the differences. Okay, who's next? Kathy.
Praise Abba, Yahweh. And thank you so much, Rabbi.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Deirdre. We're all going through our wounds, and I just praise that Abba cares about healing us. He really does. And I'm just so grateful to be here, part of this congregation, and to have you as my rabbi, my teacher, my papa. And there's just so much that you triggered and encouraged, but Abba is just taking me into a whole new season of great hope and joy and endless possibilities,
Amen.
Which couldn't have happened. He started me with a job. I worked one day this week in orientation. It was, hallelujah, great. And he's just giving me all these visions of not being limited anymore. And so I just thank you. I'm so looking forward. I mean, I thought I was done because I've nurtured this stuff since I was 5, and I'm going to be 67 in April. And I don't have to let it poison any more of my future. Hallelujah.
Amen.
Thank you.
Amen. I want to say something real quickly here. And this is advice for all of you, no matter how old you are, but especially if you're getting into your, sort of 60s and older. Because I'm watching, my parents who are in their 80s. I'm watching Julie's father who's 90, and others who are getting into the more extreme end of the age range. And I'm watching people like Fred. Fred's 90-something years old. Everybody knows Fred who comes to our feasts. And what I'm telling you is the success, watching someone like Rabbi Tom, who has the mic now, the success of being older has an incredible part of that has to do with having a purpose and a desire to be doing something. And it doesn't mean that even if it's a hobby or something, but just having existence, it doesn't work, okay? When you get to the point where you're just existing, you're not going to exist very long because nobody wants to just exist, okay? But I watch Fred, and Fred swims every day and works out all the time, and he's incredible, okay? And he walked all the way from the dining hall to the meeting hall, which was a good walk at Sukkot, back and forth every day, 3 times a day for the meals. He's an inspiration. But he has things to do, okay? And if you're younger, start planning what it is you're going to do when you get to be that age. Some of you think, well, I'm not even thinking I'm ever going to get there. Well, you'll be surprised. Some of the people that end up in the worst possible places is they lived longer than they thought they would. And now they have no idea what to do with themselves, okay? Plan. Okay, you might not be able to plan retirement like it used to be, I'm planning to retire, I'm just going to be vacationing all the time. You know what? That gets boring very quickly, and you don't have enough money to do it anyway, generally, okay? But have stuff to do, and then you will look forward to every day. And generally, it has to do with being productive. In other words, being useful to somebody. Productive doesn't necessarily mean having a job. It just means being useful to somebody. We have a bunch of people that have moved here that are a little bit in the older range, and they, what they do? They're here. They're finding things to do. They work. They volunteer. It keeps them busy. It makes them feel good. It gives them that optimism as you do now have of being able to have a productivity and ability to be useful in some way going forward, and there's joy in that. Okay? There's no joy in existing. Existence itself has no emotional benefit. You wake up, you eat or sleep, whatever you need to do, and you go back to, this existence, you need to have something to do. And by the way, doing it doesn't mean physically. You could do it by reading. You could do it you got to do something that's actively giving you some sort of joy and making you feel like you're beyond just existing. All right? Plan for that, because I watch my parents have very active retirements, and they're doing great. And I watch other people that really struggle. My father-in-law really struggles because he doesn't have any desire to do anything. And that's hard for Julie. The Rebbitzin really struggles down there with her father because nothing interests him. We went to there's a local pool there that you pay $2 or $3 to go to by where she lives, and we noticed that in the pool, because it's Cape Coral and got a lot of retired older people there, the pool was filled with people not that much younger than him. Now he's 90, but there had to be a lot of people in there in their 70s and 80s, and and there's a ramp you can go to. No interest. And this is the sad part, watching people get to a place where they have nothing that is a reason to be here. They're just existing. And so I'm glad to see that spark in Kathy that she's now sharing with all of you, that she's realizing she can do more and have more purpose and have more things that could now open up as possibilities. And that gives you a new renewed energy and vitality in your life. All right? So listen, I'm 56. 65 is going to sneak up on me real quick if I don't pay attention. I don't know how I got to 56. I barely remember being 40. Okay, I'm just saying. I almost can't realize, when I get my birthday comes around, I'm like, why? How could I be 57 this year? I'm like, not because of anything else, like, where did all that time disappear to? Well, I've been so busy doing and doing and doing. Well, may Yah allow me to keep doing that all the way to 95 or whatever, and then I will have purpose and vitality and all of that all the way through. But you need to find stuff. Look, believe it or not, it could be a hobby too, anything. Just something that gets you where you wake up in the day and say, I've got something to do I'm excited about doing that I'm going to enjoy, and there's a reason to be around. Okay? And just don't miss the opportunity to plan ahead for that. It's enough to think about planning ahead financially for it, which most of us fail. Okay, we the average American, retires broke. By average, I mean like 90% or whatever. I mean, they just don't have. But that's okay. At least have a plan to not just exist after that, though. Be active in your mind and in your body to do stuff, Rabbi Tom was telling me how he goes to the gym, and he's in that wheelchair, but he goes, and I just found, by the way, at the gym, what you were talking about, the continuous rope thing, because I didn't know where that was, but then I happened to be stretching near that apparatus. There's a rope that you can sit there, right, or stand, and you pull on it, and it never stops. It's like on a pulley, and you just keep pulling on it, but it gives you a way to work your upper body, and so Rabbi Tom gets to sit there and pull on the rope, and if he can go to a gym and find a way to work out, why can't you? I'm thinking, why can't me? And by the way, I have finally gone to my gym. One time this week. I've already lost 0 pounds. And, okay, but I was inspired by my conversations with him because he goes to the same gym when he tells me all the things he does, and he goes a couple times a week. And I'm thinking, what in the world is my excuse just because I didn't feel like it in the morning? And he goes and he gets this stuff done. I mean, it should inspire all of us that in other words, we can do more than we think we can do. But you got to plan, for that part of your life and realize, part of, I think, you got to remember, Rabbi Tom and I had a conversation, and I'm not embarrassed. I don't think he's embarrassed for me to tell you this. But, I told him a long time back when he thought he was done, and I told him he's not done. And I know he took that to heart. And he's now been living his life knowing, wait a minute, Rabbi said I'm not done. Maybe I'm not done. I got stuff I can do. And he contributes, and he's available, and he does different projects that and he teaches, etc. I mean, just knowing you're not done. Okay, All right, now that I just talked about you, you have the mic. Go ahead.
Thank you, Rabbi. No, I'm not done.
Good.
Far from it. But thank you for your comments on purpose. Your whole teaching it should be very inspiring to every one of us here. But I got to thinking what you said about David HaMelech, David the king. He committed some really heinous and horrible crimes, and yet Yahweh forgave him because his tshuva was really sincere and heartfelt. And that thought alone gives me hope because, in my past life, I wasn't exactly a good person. I have a horrible and blasphemous past, and yet you said Yahweh has picked each one of us to be a king and a priest in his kingdom. That's awe-inspiring.
Amen.
But the thing is that I was thinking of too, although King David was forgiven, he still had to pay the piper, didn't he? There still was a price to pay.
Yeah.
In his later life, he was cold and he had debilitating illnesses and so on.
Yeah. There are natural consequences that don't necessarily get, put aside just because you did what you needed to do. But yet he does get to still be a man after Yah's own heart. Yeah. Okay, go ahead.
I just wanted to share that actually on my way here from Atlanta, I actually listened to your forgiveness teaching that was given to me by the lovely staff and from
Put it
the office.
right up by your mouth.
Okay. And before actually walking into this building, I had to pray about how I had to work on that. And you just revealed some things that make it, I'm trying not to cry, but if I cry, just cut the cameras. But just to get to it, there are times where I would actually, just certain Psalms, like Psalms 90 or Psalms 7 or whatever, I would just actually pray that Yah would punish, the person who did me wrong. And when you said that part of forgiveness was not to do that, I mean, it's kind of obvious, why are you going to pray for Yah to do something, but to me, I felt like it was due to them. And I don't know, think it's really great that I'm here to hear what you said, and it's definitely a work in progress to work through forgiveness, because I don't want to be, I don't want to be the one that says that says something but it's not true, because I want, Abba to forgive me for all my doings, and I do find myself continuously asking for forgiveness for the situations that I did to put me in that situation. And it's just it could quickly become a really bad cycle. And I just know that I'll actively work towards actually forgiving and letting it go. And despite me wanting everything under the sun bad to happen to that person, it's not where my heart should be. So I just want to thank you for...
Amen. I appreciate that. Thank you very much. Okay, so look, when you want, there's just two things that are happening. When you want all these horrible things to happen to somebody, that's your pain speaking. What you want instead is your emunah to speak, okay? And the emunah speaking is your knowing and trusting that whatever they're supposed to have happened to them, whatever justice truly looks like, will happen, because Yahweh will not be mocked. Okay? And so you need to let your emunah do the speaking, not your pain. Okay? Okay? Just have the peace knowing that Yah is in control. Okay? And everything you read about in the scripture tells that he is a just and righteous Elohim. And so there will be justice. And there will be righteousness. And whatever is the right thing to happen to that person at whatever point will. And so you don't need to be involved in that at all. What you need to do is trust that he has it. And so you can let it go. Okay? And this is a look, if you're a parent, you understand this, because at some point your child grows up to the point where they leave your house. And you've got to release them out there and trust that they're going to be okay, because you no longer can bubble wrap them like you did when they were 3 and 4 and 5 years old and try to keep them protected from all things. And that didn't work anyway, because they still fell and scraped their knees and broke things and whatever they did. But you're releasing them, and they have to let go and trust Yah to take care of it. Well, that also works with the negative things in life. You have to be able to let go and trust that he will take care of it appropriately. And really, somehow, ultimately, you could find in your heart that that person could be awakened and make teshuvah and become a healthy person. Because it's a very unhealthy person that does the horrible things that they do, because it's a very unhealthy place they have to be coming out of to do that. And so you have to recognize how miserable it must be to be them. Not just how miserable it is to be you, having received from them, but how miserable it must be just to be them. And now you have come through the miserable thing they did to you, and you're now going through a healing process and are going to be fine. And if they haven't, they're still miserable being them. So rather than wanting them to be more miserable, why not desire that Abba do what's necessary to allow them to come out of their misery and not hurt anybody anymore? But see, you're still wanting an eye for an eye. You want that pain for pain. They caused me pain. I want them to suffer because I suffered. Well, is their suffering going to take away your suffering? No. Why don't you instead want them to be healed as you're being healed? That's hard. Well, Yeshua tells us to love our enemies. That's hard. And essentially, that's what you're being asked to do, right? Love an enemy. A person who treated you that horribly has got to be an enemy. Why would you want horrible, mean, terrible things on someone who's not an enemy? Just, so that's part of your healing process. And you were one of the people, I guess I was mentioning, who might have just heard forgiveness, and now you're hearing it all over again. Not quite the same as the first one, but a lot of the same elements in it. Okay? Who's next? Okay, Steve.
Excuse me. The one thing I think is hard for many to deal with is the fact that me, or maybe you, or all of us aren't perfect. And the other thing is, I think in that is we expect the person that are helping us, or we're looking to help forward to be perfect. So maybe you can address that.
Well, you know what? Let me use Rabbi Tom as an example, okay? He's looking at me like, uh-oh. Okay, Rabbi Tom has said many times, we've had men's groups and other things, that there's stuff that he's done in his life that he doesn't ever want to share with anybody because it's pretty bad stuff, whatever it is. I don't know what it is. He's never told me. But here's the thing. I didn't meet him then. I met him now. And what a tragedy it would be if I looked at him as if he was that person when he's not anymore. What a tragedy it would be if I didn't allow the relationship because I had it tainted by stuff he'd done that isn't him anymore. And so the person that did whatever they did to you, okay, what if they could be a Rabbi Tom in the future, meaning that they could change and grow, and that horrible person they were then is somebody that they would hope and wish nobody would ever remember again, because that's not who they are anymore, okay? Because after all, he's made it pretty clear that it was, at least in his mind, pretty awful, okay? But he's not that person. And I think a lot of us can say, oh, you have no idea what I was. I was a gangbanger. I was a this. I was a drug addict. I sold drugs. I did this. Whatever, awful thing that you did. And by the way, some of you think you were awful, and then you could tell somebody, and they'll be like, really? That you think was so awful? But to you, it was awful, And some of us, it was awful by everybody's standards. The thing is, you don't have to stay that person, and you should not be looked at and treated as if you're still that person. Because we're all new creatures in Messiah Yeshua, right? Amen? Okay? And so anybody can make a turnaround. I know you think, well, not the person that did this horrible thing to me. Well, you never know. Because there are people in this room that did probably similar horrible things, but not anymore. And it's a good thing you don't know about it, because it would totally mess with the way you look at them. Because you wouldn't look at them as they are now. You would look at them as you just found out they used to be. And that would be totally unfair to them. That would be unfair to you, because you'd miss out on a relationship that you're now going to allow to be tainted by something that's no longer true, but was true at one point. Okay? So that's how I would address that point, that Steve was bringing up, is that, we're all, hopefully, going to become Yeshua-like. And guess what? When you become Yeshua-like, you're going to look back at how you are now and think that was pretty dregs. Because when you compare you now to him, that falls pretty short. But you know what? You now, compared to who you were, that fell really short compared to where you are now. And so, this is the whole package there as far as that, So even in your case, and in all of our cases, if that person is still breathing, they could make a turnaround. Look, Paul was literally killing the early followers of Yeshua. And then somehow he ended up writing more of the New Testament than anybody. That's a pretty big turnaround. Okay? Think about the emotional challenge for the ones who now needed to accept him in. What do you mean you're letting that guy in? He was killing us 5 minutes ago. Well, he's had a life change. We could keep looking at him as the guy who, locked up and attacked and sent to prison a bunch of early believers, or we could look at him as a guy who's now doing the work of Yah. Was he genuine both ways? Yes, he was. He was genuinely who he was when he was doing the first, and he was genuinely who he was when he was doing the second. I'm sure Rabbi Tom was genuinely whatever he says was so whatever it was when he was younger. But he's 100% genuinely this way now. And so why should any of us even care whatever that was? Because that's not him now. That old man's been buried. He's a new creation. That's what we should be hoping in our forgiving others, that transformation may be possible. Okay? Because anything else, okay, is just pain for pain. It doesn't help anything. Okay, Tricia.
Thank you. Thank you. 7 years, but yet 40 years waiting for what happened a couple weeks ago. It all has to do with forgiveness and pain that was done to me and stuff that I've had to deal with as I've been searching from one Elohim to another till I finally come to the truth of the Creator. And under your guidance and protection and safety, it does take time to heal and to really, truly heal. And a week ago when I talked to you about what was happening in my family, my heart was crying out because I saw the revenge of the Father on that one that did what they did. And I cried out, please have mercy and compassion on that person, because although they are receiving from you, you know, I was able to forgive to a level of realizing that we were all Torahlessness, less, you know what I'm saying?
Without Torah.
Without Torah. And to have his revenge on the innocent, to me it's like innocent, you know, they don't know what they're doing. To have the comprehension of understanding, to forgive them at that level, forgive them for they know not what they're doing, and to know that they did something to me and to be able to forgive them, then yet ask the Father to forgive them so that that revenge isn't cycled down onto them, even though they are the product of the consequences of the choices and actions that they've done. But that is a level of heart that I would never have been able to reach or to get to that comprehension without being underneath your covering. And I appreciate everything that you have instilled into me and taught so that Abba could allow me to have that prayer for that person. And thank you.
No, you're very welcome. Appreciate that. You know, and we've dealt with some pretty, you know, pretty strong strongholds. We've dealt with some pretty, you know, but what I want everybody to understand here is this is not about her saying, and I don't feel if I'm wrong, she'll say so, but this is not about her saying that I specifically was the one who did anything in particular. It's her willingness to come into the structure and trust that relationship through Yeshua, through the Father, through the leadership that has freed her from these strongholds, okay? So I don't want you to ever think that this is now becoming about, let's just all tell you how great Rabbi is. Well, no, I'm doing my role. And in that role, her submission to that role and trust in that role. Look, the person that went up to Yeshua, Yeshua said, your trust and faith and belief has made you well. Okay, you don't see Yeshua waving his arms and doing magic or something. And he didn't go up and put his hand on their head and heal them. He just said, your faith, your belief. And so it's her trust and belief in the Elohim of Israel, her trust and faith and belief in Messiah, her trust and faith, belief in my position in that structure is the point. That's the same thing you're hearing from Kathy. It's the same thing you're hearing from some of the other people. And it's not about me. I'm simply the person in that place in this structure here. And that's the trust and belief in the person it's the position, not so much just me. Now, hopefully I'm doing the job in the right way to do it, but I'm just saying it's more that, okay? I want you just to make sure you're hearing that. Because I don't want this just to turn into, Rabbi, we love you, you're so great, and everything else, because that's not what it's about, and that's not what she was trying to say. But they are thanking me for being available in that role to be used in that role, okay? And so I just want to make sure that that part is sort of repackaged and clear. Because I can tell you in watching the transformations, you know, it's the trust in the process and it's the trust in the structure that brings it, all right? Now, you know, a lot of people have wrongly trusted in wrong structures and ended up in all kinds of weird, cultish, bad stuff. And that's why even Tricia said she's looked at other Elohims and looked at other things that have been in wrong structures and tried a lot of wrong things. It didn't work well. But now that she's found truth, all of a sudden, not all of a sudden, it's been a journey. But in that journey, release from different things has come. And freedom is finally being achieved, okay, from all of that stuff. And to see the joy that she now has, it's fabulous, okay? But it's a journey. But it really, for all of you to get the most out of what she said, It's because she has been, for a good period of years now, willing to, even if she didn't always agree, but willing to trust the structure. And the more she trusted and worked, the more she came to have faith in the way Abba works and in the structure. Okay? And that's the point. All right? That's the point. Okay. Gary.
Shabbat Shalom, Rabbi.
Shabbat Shalom.
Shabbat Shalom, Lakeview and Urbana. So this is something I struggled with many years ago, and this is one of those things I don't think people give it enough credit or how profound forgiveness is because it's a paradigm shift for most of us. That it's another one of those elements of the walk that we don't really fully grasp. And for me, it's been a life-changing thing because I would not, and as Rabbi Tom and all these things everybody said, would not be the person I am if it weren't for that. And I praise the Father for that. And I remember years ago something that was said to me that because I had went through that, I suppose was very profound and resonated, was that, you know, all that bitter resentment and hatred that we have because we don't have forgiveness and resolution is like drinking poison and expecting it to hurt the other person.
Yep, I've heard that too. That's a great way to say it.
And it was so, I was like, absolutely, because then in retrospect, I knew where I had come to a point through that forgiveness that I looked back, I was that angry, bitter, I was a very unhealthy person. And all the health issues that it causes, the stress and all those things. And this is something very needful in the body because most people come in as there's so many things that we have, and we come out of a system where we've been lied to, and all those it's a cyclical thing.
Yep.
And it is tearing people up and hindering them from being able to move forward. And this is just one of those things that, in my opinion, is a paradigm that must be changed. And I'm just grateful for it. And I'm glad that you're going over what some may be like, well, I've heard, you know, there's so much to it. And if you haven't listened to that older teaching and haven't listened to it and listened along with repentance, those are they're one teachings. I would dare say that there's not a person who cannot listen to that multiple times because it's one of those things that we really have to wrap our minds around.
Amen. Thank you, Gary. All right. Who's next?
Thank you so much for this teaching, Rabbi. When you started talking about forgiveness, it hit a deep place in me, and it's an area of my life that I've been struggling to deal with. I have some people that have done some things to my grandchildren, my children, that as a father and a grandfather, I have a hard time forgiving because what I can't deal with is that somehow I'm of the opinion that if I forgive, I've condoned it. I've said it was okay, and I know that's not true. But what kept coming at me while you were talking was that forgiveness is just part of submission, that I have to submit to the Father. I have to submit to the Father's ability to take this away from me and for Him to make it right and for Him to repay those who have transgressed against Him. And by my submission, I think that's part of healing. Because I've been hanging on to this because I'm self-sovereign in that respect. It's part of who I am to hang on to that hatred and that ill feeling towards the people who have victimized my children. And by letting go of that self-sovereignty, by becoming submissive to the Father and allowing my faith to deal with it, I think that helps me heal. And all that has come from listening to your teaching today, and I thank you for it.
Amen. Appreciate that. I actually wrote that down. Next week, I'll just make sure to hit that point at the beginning hard again. Look, forgiveness, a lot of it when I talk about letting it go means that you're leaving it and you're releasing it to the Father. Okay? So that you are no longer needing to be the one dealing with it because it's in much better hands giving it to Him anyway. And once you give it to Him, you don't have to think about it anymore. You know? I have a few people here that will text me because of my covering relationship with them, like Tricia and others who will text me about a situation I need prayer. And then I don't always get to respond right away, but they'll tell me that just in asking me and being in that structure, they get answers quickly because they've put it into the right place. Because it shows the Father that and actually that's them releasing it into the system, so to speak. So now they have more shalom. They know they've done what they're supposed to do. And now the system is going to take care of it, which is the Father is going to handle, the structure is going to handle what needs to be handled. I'm part of that vertical thing, but even though I didn't necessarily each time get involved, there were times where I didn't even get to pray and they got the answers anyway because I didn't get to see it on my phone. I was in a meeting or something and they'll tell me, oh no, I got immediate answers. Because they also found the shalom because they released it. They said, okay, I asked them to pray for it. I know it's going to be handled. I don't have to worry about it anymore. Okay? It's the same thing that Pete was just saying. If you have this awful thing going on with somebody, release that to the Father. He'll handle it. Don't worry. That person will get what they're supposed to get in whatever manner they're supposed to get it. And it may not be the way you want it done, but he's always right, and he'll handle it. But then you will have let go all of that bitterness and all that poison, all that toxicity. Okay? And that's really a really important point. Thank you for pointing that out. Okay. Rob, go ahead.
From Sam, how is this possible when the other party is dead?
Okay, well, first of all, except for the reconciliation and restoration, which are things that are optional, well, if the person has passed away, that's not optional. But the first two things are always possible because they don't need the other person. You need to forgive. Dead or alive, doesn't matter. You have to release all of that negative, emotional, toxic garbage. Okay? All right? And you have to resolve it so that it no longer... Now, resolve doesn't mean that it's fixed, settled. It means that you are no longer being affected by it. You've taken it to, you made a decision that it is now settled in some way where it's no longer either your problem or you trust that he's going to handle it, whatever it is. So it's no longer something that's a loose end in your life. An emotional loose end all those emotional loose ends are going to just really wreak havoc in your present and your future. Tie those things up, stick them in a box, resolve them. Resolving it means that it can be as simple as it's no longer your problem. You've passed it on the line. It doesn't mean that there's actually been a resolution to it. You may still have an estrangement with somebody, especially if they passed away. You can never fix that. But you can be okay with that, and I'll leave that to him. Okay? Next question.
From Walk Softly, says, who do I forgive when our child has died and our family has varied levels of PTSD and we see no other parents who have healed either?
I'm not sure I followed the whole flow of that. Who should I forgive if there's a child that's died?
It says, who do I forgive when our child has died, and our family has varied levels of PTSD? And I think maybe they probably see other families that have the same issues.
Okay, well, the PTSD from the trauma of the child dying is one thing that has to be dealt with. Each individual has to deal with it. As far as you have to just be able to release, because often if a child dies, at the very worst or very least, if there's no cause that you could point to, anybody that could have stopped it or prevented it or some sort of thing like that happens, could have been a health thing or a birth defect, so anything that could happen that you can't say, well, the doctors didn't or the parent didn't. Then often we blame the Creator for allowing that child to come and die and that kind of thing. So forgiveness is the releasing of the negative emotion, okay? All right? In other words, making peace with the fact that your child was allowed to be taken, allowed to pass, and to make peace with that. Okay, I'll use the example, I've said this in past teachings, where, we had a couple that was fairly close with my wife and myself, but really but recognize that, for example, this older couple that we knew, they were at peace with his dying because he was very unhealthy. They were at peace that was coming in the future. Well, then she got a very aggressive cancer out of nowhere and died quickly. And then he never made peace with that and ended up leaving Torah, leaving Yah, leaving everything because he was angry with the Creator. How could you do this? We were already at peace with it being the other way. I was supposed to go first, blah, 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 right? So things happen, but you have to find a way to make peace with that things happen. Okay? And so hopefully that answers the question for that person. Now, the PTSD, each of those people has to find their own way to find a way to make peace with what happened. You can't really do anything but encourage them to get the help and counsel they need to deal with their trauma. Okay? Because really it's the unresolved trauma that is causing the PTSD. Okay? Next.
From Olivier and Janet Hoffman. It says, Rabbi, in the context of marriage, when reconciliation is a must, do you recommend to confess our offenses to each other regularly, perhaps daily?
No. No. Look, all marriages are unique in certain elements and common in other elements, okay? It really is going to be unique to how each one of the two of the people involved handle different things and what needs to be done. What you need to do is own your stuff quickly, okay? Own your stuff quickly. Do what you can to offer reconciliation, to make restitution if possible, to make things right, and that's your side of it. And then the other side of it is when they do things, forgive quickly and make peace with it quickly. You know, it's both sides, okay? But it really, every couple's deal has to be dealt with individually. I can't just give you a straightforward thing. All right.
Okay, from Olivia and Janet Hoffman. It says, Rabbi, how do we help our children do this to help them to forgive us and their friends?
Again, you just walk them through the process that I walked you guys through. Help them understand the difference between forgiveness and reconciliation, that forgiveness is something they have to do no matter what, because otherwise, it's kind of like what Gary said, and I've heard this before, the idea of, I'm going to drink a bunch of poison hoping you're going to die. You know, it just doesn't work that way, okay? So let them understand the harm they're doing themselves by not forgiving, but then understand how that then plays into the potential for restoration and reconciliation. Okay, now we didn't really get into that too much. We will as we go through the teaching here and we start dealing with some verses that deal with reconciliation and restoration, okay? But at this point, I want you just to understand the concepts. So you just have to help your children understand the definition of the terms and how they actually affect them. They must deal with forgiveness and resolution, or they will suffer the consequences of unresolved toxicity in their system. Okay? And I didn't use that word during the teaching, but that's really the whole point, is that unforgiveness is extremely toxic, okay, to you and everyone around you. So that's sort of a bonus you get in the Afterburn, okay? Okay, unforgiveness is extremely toxic. All right, go ahead.
Mikhail Guti says, when speaking of what Yeshua did, is there a difference between forgiveness and atonement?
We'll get into that when I get to what Yeshua did. I'm not going to answer some questions that I know I'm going to answer and requires a little bit more in the teaching, so I apologize for that, Mike, but, okay, so we'll get to that for sure. But remember that atonement is about reconciliation, okay? Atonement is about allowing to get things to be at one. It's at one mint. Okay, where forgiveness doesn't necessarily have to do with reconciliation. Yeshua did what he did to make reconciliation possible. So maybe I did answer the question a little bit, but just so you understand that, okay? Atonement really is going to deal with reconciliation.
From Olivier and Janet Hoffman, it says, Rabbi, is it possible that some people have more trouble forgiving than others? Does it come down to arrogance and pride or ego or perhaps personality or upbringing?
I would say that I've not noticed any particular factor that predisposes people to be either more or less able to deal with this. So I would have no answer for that. But all of those things are factors. I mean, having a trouble forgiving can have to do with pride and other things like that. It could also just have to do with look, you are in a strong emotional place. You're just angry, which is not necessarily a pride thing or anything like that. You've suffered a pain. The pain is very visceral. It's very, you feel it very strongly. And releasing that pain is hard to do. And so you have to find a way to process the trauma, which is why they have counseling for very specific types of trauma. I remember, look, my wife had a miscarriage along the way years ago, before we had our children. Okay, we started off with a miscarriage or two. And so they recommended us to go to a group, like counseling therapy type of place for people who've had miscarriages. Because, thinking you're about to have a baby and already emotionally being attached to an idea of this baby and everything else, and then losing the baby is very traumatic. Because after all, you already had yourself holding and nursing and suckling that baby that didn't even get anywhere near that far. But, in your mind, you've already got all this stuff going on, and there's a trauma. There's trauma when you lose a spouse. There's trauma when, there's traumatic health or physical injuries or abuses of different, these are types of traumas, and they have very specific places to go to deal with those types of traumas, people that are expert at that. And so it really is going to have to do with what kind of trauma you're dealing with. But just recognize that that's what's going to affect your ability to deal with or not deal with forgiveness is going to have to do with your personality, your culture, background, and experiences, and what generational stuff might be going on. And so you need to go find someone who is trained and skilled at helping people work through that particular type of trauma. Some people do it better than others or more easily than others, but it really depends on the nature of the trauma. There are things that in your life are like, on a scale of that 1 to 100, like a 70 trauma, that to somebody else might be a 40 trauma. It just has to do with personalities and vice versa. The things that they might think is a 70 and you think is a 40. But to you, it's still a 70, and so you still need to go get the help you need to deal with something that's on that higher level of trauma. Okay? And don't worry about and never think about whether or not it's legitimate because, this is a problem we have with our friends. We go to our friends and we start telling a friend about some trauma and they look at you like, what's wrong with you? That's nothing. Well, no. It was not nothing to you, but to them it was nothing. That's not very respectful, because you've got your own stuff that they may think is nothing, quote unquote. Okay? Which is why when I counsel couples, when I do marriage counseling, I have one of the first things I insist that they do, I call it validation. By the way, it's funny because I call it validation, but the one thing that we're not doing is deciding that something is valid. Okay? What we're deciding is that the feeling is real. We're validating that the way they perceived and feel about whatever happened is really how they feel. Okay? We're not validating that it was the right way to feel or that they're having the right response. So if a person is having a reaction to trauma, we have to first validate that this is really the level of trauma they experienced from whatever they experienced, even though you may have handled it differently. Because you're not the one that's having the trauma. So it doesn't matter how you would have handled it. They're the one having the trauma, and they're handling it. So now you need to, if you're their friend, help them or guide them to someone that can help them through how they really perceived the level of trauma. Even though you may have handled it a lot differently. Okay? So that's the part of the validation. So when I have a husband and wife and the husband says this or the wife says that, I said, hold on, stop. Let's first validate that what they just said is really how they feel. Oh, but I don't understand why they felt that way. I didn't do that. Well, no. We're not talking about whether or not it's legitimate in your mind that they should feel that way. We're first deciding that it's real. This is really how he or she feels. And this is really how they perceived what happened. But that's not what happened. That's not relevant at this point. That may or may not be true. It's not relevant. Let's first start with the fact that your wife or your husband really does feel this strongly about how they perceived what happened. And let's start at that place. Because you'd rather start at the place like, well, they have no business feeling that way because that's stupid and I didn't do anything that's worthy. But see, now you're judging the whole thing and you're inserting yourself into it. The same thing has to do with what we're talking about here. Let's give you an example of how we deal with traumas. don't judge someone else's response to trauma. Okay? How you would have felt about it or how you do feel about it has no bearing on it whatsoever. Matter of fact, it only cause damage to it. If you are not going to at least validate their emotional place. Okay? By validate, that doesn't mean you're telling them they're right to feel that way. You're just recognizing that it is how they feel. Let me say that one more time to be clear. When I say validation, that's why I said the word valid isn't really the right word in there, but the way we use that word in our definition, I'm not saying that they're right to feel a certain way or respond a certain way. We're simply validating that it's legitimately how they really do feel. All right? That's the important thing. Okay, next. So I know that the Janet Hoffman, I know she does counseling and stuff. So these are all little things you could take into your practice. Hopefully they could help because, I'm not professionally certified and trained that way, but I think these are really important parts of counseling, is understanding how to validate someone's feelings, that they're real. Whether they're valid in terms of appropriate, that's part of the counseling, is to decide if something's appropriate and to help somebody process something that it turns out wasn't appropriate, how they can see how they ended up in this over-the-top place and get it back to an appropriate level. But we have to start by acknowledging, and this is part of your forgiveness and everything else, if a spouse and if a husband and wife are fighting, part of it's because they're all upset that the other person overreacted, quote unquote, in their opinion to something. Well, that's their reaction, not yours. You don't get to decide, that. Now, you can come to a third party that can help both sides see whether or not something may have been a little out of whack or a lot out of whack. But we can't start off by telling the person that they were wrong to feel a certain way. We start off by saying, we understand that this is really how you felt. Sir, do you understand this is really how your wife felt? Ma'am, do you understand this is how your husband really felt? This is how they really felt at that moment. Now let me help both of you understand, where an out of balance may have come. But you got to start with recognizing, wow, I didn't realize that what I did, because I never would have reacted that way, really would have made them that upset. So in your mind, you're like looking at it like, what's wrong with you? Why are you so upset over something so dumb? Because they're not you. And that's why you get so upset about stuff, and they look at you like you're dumb, because they're not you. You're not them, and they're not you. All right, next question.
From Randolph Sloan says, would you say 2 Corinthians 5, verse 18 is reconciliation is obligatory?
What verse are you going to?
2 Corinthians 5, verse 18.
We're going to cover that. See, as soon as he said 2 Corinthians 5, I knew we were going to get there, so we'll cover that. Okay? And then if I don't cover it to answer the question you're trying to get to, after that teaching, when I cover it, ask the question again. Okay? But we'll get there.
Okay, here's another verse. Daniel Woods is Proverbs 25, 21 through 22, connected to forgiveness from the heart.
Say it again.
Proverbs 25, 21 through 22. He says, if so, would this be the source of conviction for the other person to offer them the opportunity to repent and reconcile?
Okay, I'm going to look at this verse real quickly, but then I'm going to preemptively, strike here against all future stuff today. Proverbs, what number?
25, verses 21 and 22.
That's a whole different sort of thing. It says, if your enemy is hungry, give him bread to eat. And if he's thirsty, give him water to drink, for you're heaping coals of fire on his head, et cetera, et cetera. Look, that's something that needs a whole different level of explanation. Okay, let's stay away from the verses. I've not gone to any verses yet. Be patient, everybody. I've just scratched the surface of trying to help you understand the concepts of forgiveness, reconciliation, restoration, okay? And resolution in there, okay? There's repentance involved in some of these things. There's teshuvah involved in some of these things. There's other elements going on in these places. You can ask these questions again. Like, for example, in 2 Corinthians 5, it's all about Paul trying to make a case for how the ministry is commissioned to the service of bringing restoration to the body to favor. And so that's going to have to do with forgiveness, reconciliation, teshuvah, repentance, and other things. But the minister's job is to bring that about and instruct on how that works. It's not exactly the way Paul words it there, but it's there, okay? But it's not until you have all the other rest of the foundation laid out that then you go and read the verse and go, oh, I get it now, okay? So there's a reason why I didn't go to 2 Corinthians or any other place first, okay? Because I wanted to make sure you understood all of these other things first. It's kind of like all the grace questions I got before we got into all of the understandings of salvation, faith, and works and how they interact. You have to kind of patiently get through the whole thing. So some of you that are online especially, please listen to the whole thing and hold the question. Because if I don't cover it to your satisfaction, ask it. But please let me make the points first. And we haven't gotten anywhere into the word yet to do that, okay? I promise you, I've got 2 or 3 dozen references with lots of verses to read. Okay? We will cover, a good chunk of whatever it is that, you might possibly come up with. Okay? And then you'll have a different perspective to understand things like the things that are going on here in Proverbs. All right? Okay. Anything else?
Alyssa Holmes, how do you deal with a sister not in covenant but biological and holds grudges forever and takes things out of context?
There's nothing you can do. I mean, you just have to create the right, appropriate boundaries with people that are going to act in ways that are toxic to you. You must forgive the sister, okay? But then you have to decide we didn't really get into this, okay? But when we talked about the idea of trespass has to do with boundaries. You are absolutely encouraged and welcome that when you have somebody who is trespassing to set stronger boundaries. Okay? If somebody is trespassing in your life, then you need to make more clear boundaries that they are then made to know not to cross. And if they continue to cross them, then you can break off relationship so that they do not continue crossing your boundaries disrespectfully. But you cannot fix them. Okay? What do I do? Nothing except fix your boundaries better. Okay? Well, you don't understand. Every time I talk to my mother, she blah, blah, blah. I get those kind of phone calls all the time. Why do you let her do that? Hang up. Tell Mom, you keep doing that, I'm not calling you anymore. And as soon as Mom, tell you what, this is my counsel to people. If you've got a friend, family member, or anybody else, they get into blah, blah, blahing in your face and throwing stuff that you just don't want to do with, tell them right up front, if you do that, I will not be mad, I will not be angry, but I will hang up. And then I'll call you again another time, or you can call me again another time. We'll try again. I won't hold it against you. I'm not going to get all angry, but I'm not going to allow that boundary to continuously be crossed. I'm going to end the conversation. And that way they know in advance. Just say, look, if you're going to go here, which you know they're going to do, and you're not interested in going there, and they're not listening, you don't have to sit there and take it, but don't get angry, don't get upset, and don't just slam the phone. Say to them, hey, Mom, I told you if you go there, I'm not, so here's your warning. Either we can change the subject or I'm done with the conversation. But do it before you get upset. Don't wait till you're now angry. As soon as you see it going where it doesn't, you go say, hold on, I don't want to interrupt. If this is what you want to talk about, this is where we're going, I've already told you I'm not interested, so we can either change the subject or I could just say goodbye for now and we'll talk again next week, whatever it is. Whatever normal. And you could try again. Okay, but draw your boundaries more clearly. Define them. Do it in friendly terms. But let people know there's a consequence, not a bad one, to crossing boundaries. Okay? All right? Okay. If you put me on hold, or if I put you on hold on a phone call for more than a certain amount of time, I will hang up on you, and I expect you to hang up on me. I'm not going to sit on hold. You can call me back, or I can call you back. I'm not mad at you. I just can't be sitting on hold. And so I expect, by the way, if I put you on hold and I have to grab another call and it ends up being an emergency or something and I can't switch back to you, I expect you not to wait. I expect you to hang up. You understand? This is kind of the deal it is. But you explain to people. I have a person in my life who likes to talk to me on the phone, and then they're also talking to the cashier at the cashier's register and everything else like that. These kind of things can happen. And I tell that person, if you do that, I'm hanging up. And so as soon as they do that, I just hang up. I said, I won't be mad at you. Just call me back when you're done. Because if I'm talking to you, I don't need you having a conversation with the other 15 people around you while you're talking to me. But I tell them before it happens so they don't assume, oh, you're all mad at me. No, I'm telling you in advance. If you do that and it's just your habit and you get distracted, next thing you know, somebody grabs you into, well, I do this with people with kids, and all of a sudden their kids come in and they're talking to the kids and they're talking to, it's like, hello, are you listening to me? No, good, click. Call me back when you're done with the kids. I'm not mad. I'm not trying to be rude, but I've already told them. Now, they can't even hear me to say, hey, knock that off and listen, I'm going to hang up. They're already just, so I just hang up. Okay? But I've told them that will happen. You guys all laugh, but this is what I do. I'm too red, I'm too busy, I got too much to do. I cannot sit there while you're talking to somebody else. Okay? And by the way, if I do that to you, I expect you to hang up. If I get caught up in something else, you don't need to sit there and listen to them and wait for all of that. You know, I'm sometimes surprised that I put somebody on hold and I go back and they're still there. I'm like, you're still there? I would have hung up 5 minutes ago. All right? But see, it's about communicating the boundaries. Forget about whether you think I'm right or wrong in what I just told you. The point is, I'm right about setting a boundary, communicating that to the person. Okay, that's the point I'm trying to make. Okay? Set a boundary in advance and say, look, you crossed this boundary. I'm not going to get mad. I'm not going to get upset. But we're not going to talk. Same thing like, for example, boundaries like you have parents and relatives that if you bring your children to and they're not going to respect your Torah observance and they're going to try to feed them pork and whatever they're going to try to do, you can tell them, you crossed this boundary. I'm not bringing the kids over. Not mad at you. That's your thing. But if you can't respect my boundaries, then I'm not doing it. Okay? By the way, your adult child lives in your house who's not respecting your boundaries. Throw them out. No. Tell them what the rules are. If you don't respect my boundaries, you need to leave. I want you to be here. I want to help you. I realize you're struggling in life, but you're going to have to respect the boundaries. It's my house. A lot of people struggle with this. By the way, that goes for parents too. You're an adult and you moved your parents back in. It's still your house. Oh, but my mom still treats me like I'm 10. Well, she needs to stop. And you need to remind mom that you're not 10. And say, Mom, you're in my house now. These are my boundaries, my rules. If that doesn't work for you, you could always go back somewhere else. But I know you need my help and I want to take care of you, but I need some respect. You're in my house now. Okay? Communicate your boundaries and then be consistent if people cross them. Because if you let them cross them and don't do anything, they're not going to stop trespassing. They're going to take that as an invitation to continue. All right, next.
From Stephanie Henderson, says, my husband left the kids and I 11 years ago, and with the pain of the divorce is still there. I thought I'd forgiven him, but at times I still get angry at him. How do I deal with these feelings?
All right, we can need to counsel. We can help work you through it. But basically it has to do with, again, you have to release the control factors that, you know, a lot of our pain that we don't let go is because we want to be able to control what we can't control. Okay? And that sometimes has to do with also controlling the justice or lack thereof that you might perceive not happening to that person, or the comeuppance that you want them to get, or whatever it is, or the restoration that you want, or reconciliation that'll never happen, whatever. So letting go of stuff is tough, but counsel will help. It's hard to answer these questions with just limited information, but, you know, counsel will help. What else you got?
From Evangeline Agalasso, is a personal conviction the same with self-awareness that you have to act on it?
No, look, I mean, personal conviction and self-awareness, two completely different things, but you have to be aware of your convictions. You have to be aware of what motivated you to do or not do something. Okay, self-awareness is being aware of what motivates you, what drives you, and being aware of what you're doing. First, it's about being aware of what you're doing, and then it's about being aware of why you did it, or what you didn't do and why you didn't do it, okay? And then you'll figure out that you might have personal convictions that either caused you to do or not to do. And those convictions may be good to hold on to. They may need to be changed.
From Kathleen Phillips, this question is not forgiving yourself and others akin to voluntarily remaining in victimhood status?
Yes. If I understood the question right, yes. Okay? Not forgiving yourself and not forgiving others keeps you in victim mode. Okay? And then you can't have victory. You can't move forward because you still got the past involving itself in your present and totally messing with your future. All right? Anybody else?
From the witness, would unforgiveness bring upon a curse on the person that is not forgiving?
Well, not the way you're thinking, like we think of curses, but yes, it will bring, it's toxic. It's going to mess with your life. It's going to curse you. Okay, the root of bitterness is going to eat at your life and those around you. It's going to bring cursing. Not a curse like someone's going to pronounce a curse over you or Abba's going to do something to you. You're going to create your own troubles. Okay? Nobody's going to need to do anything to you. You're going to bring it on yourself. You're going to ruin relationships, ruin opportunities, ruin jobs, ruin something because of the anger, the bitterness, and the unresolved toxicity.
From Pauline, what about national reconciliation? First Nations grievances. Is it hard to forgive genocide?
It's all the same thing. No matter what grievance you have, no matter what abuse or trespass was done, you have to let it go or it will completely disempower your forward movement. And you have to recognize that you can't fix it. And because you can't fix it, you're going to have to give it up to the Father and let the Father deal with it. There have been and are continuing to be atrocious genocidal things happening in the world. We don't read about them very much in the news, but there's several countries in Africa that have that happening right now. Okay, and if you want to know about where some of these things are happening, you can go to like Genocide Watch and some of these other websites where they can tell you where these things are happening. That places of the world, because they don't have anything most people want, nobody really cares. But they're still happening. Okay, and some of the things happened in the past, some of them are continuing to happen in the present. But I can tell you right now, for example, much, and don't get mad at me, but much of the First Nation suffering that continues is because they refuse to take advantage of being wherever they are and all the opportunities that are available. They choose to isolate themselves on a property and do whatever they're doing not to take advantage of being in Canada or the U.S. or wherever they were talking about. You know, because in Canada they refer to them as First Nation. Here they would call them by whatever tribes or whatever they were. But the thing is, we're talking about a lot of them by choice because there's a lot of them that decided to take advantage of the world they live in, even though it was taken from them and all these other horrible things, I'm not discounting, but still ended up finding a way to thrive in that new world. You could either choose to thrive in the new world, or you could sit there with your pride and your ego saying, no, I want my world back. Well, you're not getting it back. Not probably in your lifetime for sure, so now you got to figure out what to do. You know, Yah told the prophet to tell Israel when Babylon came, he said, look, they're coming. And you know what? I want you to build houses. Get married. Learn to live. Don't just go there all angry that your land was taken and have bitterness and just die there. But you have to exist and live and learn to live under those conditions. Okay? And I don't have a lack of empathy and sympathy for all of the things that the First Nation people have dealt with, because look, after all, we all live in a country that was not our country. And we took it from them. But that's just like any abuse you already had that happened in the past. And now you can either choose to live as best you can under the conditions that are actually there, or you can sit there and wallow in how wrong it is to have that have happened to you, because this could be like any abuse in your life. You can sit there miserably going, well, it's so unfair that I had a life where this happened to me. Well, I mean, as a nation, you could say the same thing. Or you could decide, no, I'm going to overcome all that, and I'm going to find a way to thrive under those terrible conditions. And I'm going to leave the judgment, the compensation for the wrongdoing, the meting out of the punishment or whatever it's supposed to be, the reaping and sowing thing, I'll leave that to Yah. There's no change between individual and national, leaving it to the Creator. It's not yours to fix. And by, reality, you couldn't anyway. Just like I say during election, look, it's an election year. And I promise you, no matter who we elect, they're not going to fix everything. They can't. Well, they also won't, but they can't. There's too many things that are just too big and too problematic for them under the structure they have to fix things. Because it requires letting go of all the junk, which they just can't do it. They're not in a place in their maturity and growth and everything else to do that. Okay? So you could either sit there with the victim mentality, which a lot of First Nation people do, or a lot of, Native Americans do, whatever it is. You can sit with that victim mentality, or you could decide to do something under the fact that you're in a less than ideal situation. Okay? Because I promise you, there are people that have the exact same genealogy that whoever might be saying that does, who's found a way to thrive in it. No less First Nation or Native, the genealogy, they're genetically just as purely whatever that is, if you want to look at it that way, and they found a way to make a life out of it, okay? Now, again, I'm not saying, well, it's too bad on you, suck it up. I'm saying, look, it is what it is. What are you going to, you're not going to fix it. You can go tilt at all the windmills you want. It's not going to fix anything, okay? There was horrific injustices done to get the world to be where it is today. Every nation is guilty. Every nation that exists at some point displaced some other people from the place that they are, and there were wars and people were killed and all kinds of genocidal things. Every part of this world has that. So don't feel so bad. Okay, even the people that say, well, you guys did this to the First Nation people. You know what? But a lot of people that are here because they were thrown out of some other place. After having that, we all have that. So a lot of times we're on one side of it, or a lot of times we're on the other side of it. Does it excuse it? No. Am I justifying it? No. I'm saying it is what it is. We all need to learn that phrase if you're ever going to find peace. You got to start with everything that happened prior to this very second that I'm speaking already is what it is. Everything from this second, because nothing exists except this second. The future doesn't exist. The past doesn't exist. It already is what it is. Now what are you going to do with it? Well, I'm going to let the past leak its way into my present and screw me up so I can't move forward. Well, that's not very bright. That is not going to work. Or I'm going to find a way to be at peace with the reality of the world, which is you know what? There's a reason why we need Yeshua. Did anybody ever figure that out? Okay? If we had it all going on so great, why would anybody be all excited about him coming back? He's got to come back because he's got to come here and smash the nations back to the way he needs to be. All right? And so when you look around and you see everything the way it is, First Nation people, any other people that are having whatever abuses, I don't care if it's racial or cultural or religious, this is why we need our Messiah. Okay? All right. Now, that being said, as we close here, I want to say this. It's Shabbat, so there would never be a cost for this, but you should all recognize, and if you've never gone and paid for anything, you would never know, you got yourself in the last 2.5 hours, whatever it's been, probably what normally people would pay over $1,000 to get like in a week or a weekend at a seminar, all right? If you would understand the value of what I threw at you. And I'm not saying that to pump myself up. I'm just trying to say, I'm telling you, I gave you, and there are other people here that have known what I'm talking about. I gave you, if you would embrace it, what people pay a lot of money to go hear somebody speak on, to try to give them tools to help fix their emotional place in life so they can get unstuck in their life, okay? And it's Shabbat, so of course it was free, but it would have been free anyway. But I'm saying this is the kind of stuff that people literally pay for a one-day seminar, $300, $500 at least. I know, because I've paid for them. No, I mean, I'm serious. I've paid, and they were worth every penny and more. So I know what they give, and I just crammed it into 2 hours, 2.5 hours, whatever I just spoke, okay? And I gave you in that little section there. and it costs you nothing. But here's the thing. Will you value it as much as the person that would have paid $500 for that? That's the question. Will you value it as much or more? Because I can promise you the counseling, the answers, the insights, the tools, the distinctions that I just gave you, which is a distilled from 50 years of almost studying this, okay? Started, well, that's 40, so like 12, 15 years old, 13, 14 years old, learning and studying about why we are the way we are and how do the ones who figure out how to be successful figure it out. And mostly the reason they're successful is they figured out how to minimize the effect of the negative stuff. Okay? So the negative stuff doesn't constantly end up being these chains with big giant weighted balls on them that you're dragging around behind you. The old proverbial ball and chain thing, you know, just weighting you down. So please, as we close here, I ask that you would just go listen to this over and over again. This is going to free you from so much if you would just embrace it, okay? The truth will make you free. But it's not just the truth. It's got to be a relationship with it. You have to know the truth, right? From John 8. You got to know the truth, and then that truth in a relationship with it, the truth about forgiveness will set you free from all kinds of pain. Amen? Amen. All right, we're going to go ahead and close. Where are the children?
Okay.